Hey guys, Galaxy Studios here with my coverage of the qualifying round of the Bloons Tower Defense 6 tournament. This is a massive 256 player tournament featuring many Bloons Tower Defense content creators you all know and love, as well as most of the best players in the game. And I'm going to be covering every single round, so let's go. The tournament started off with a qualifier, meant to narrow down everyone who wanted to compete to the top 256. This challenge was Log's least cashed chimps with no heroes or tier 5 towers, and we were given 2 weeks to build the best submission we could. I started out with one of my favorite strategies, if not my favorite strategy in the entire game, Brit Drive. The combination of the embrittlement and the low damage tower that is the bottom path tack shooter makes for a deadly combination, especially when paired with other buffs like the primary trading village and the alchemist. I did pretty well with this strategy on my first attempt, but got stonewalled by around 95, so I ended up adding a ground zero to handle those DDTs and extra ceramics. It was a really rough submission at about 78,000, but I knew that this would probably put me into the tournament, and as it turns out, it was more than enough to get me a spot in the top 256 at the end of the day. However, I decided to keep pushing because I didn't quite feel safe with this. Instead of ground zero, I decided to make my ceramic tower of choice, the T-Rex, the starting point with my second submission. The T-Rex is responsible for the current least cashed chimps run of all time, done by Alchemist as OP. I didn't have something like Brickle to break down the outer Moab layers, but I could still use T-Rex's respectable damage output and excellent utility against super ceramics to take care of most problems, and then I decided on Brit Drive again for the remainder of my DPS. I ended up putting 3 overdrives as well as a spike balls in the back to clean up any extra ceramics and a Moab shredder for the bad layer. That submission put me at around 63k, and at this point I wanted to push below 60k. For my third submission, I cut 1 overdrive, moved the alchemist to a more useful position, and then just started grinding until I managed to get my final submission with a score of 59,320. The footage you're seeing on screen right now is not my winning setup. I will have a screenshot of my winning setup right now. It's just a run that I did for fun in order to show you guys a less optimized version of what I ended up using. I ended up submitting that and got a respectable seed 90 out of 380 or so submissions, getting me into the tournament bracket. Now, I'm ready for what I'm going to be facing in the tournament. Now, I'm going to be covering every single round. That means I'm not just talking about myself. I'm going to be talking about all the notable people in the tournament. Congratulations to Hoppyface for winning the qualifiers. The Monkey Pirate strategy was something nobody else thought of, and it was really inspired, and managed to push Hoppyface past all the other Tech Terra submissions. Congrats to Tyler, Dex, and Reflect for having the best Tech Terra submissions. I should mention that I did my final submission on day 3 and then didn't play for the next 10 days. I probably would have thought of a Tech Terra submission if I had kept playing and grinding, but I didn't need to. Now, I'm going to be covering every single major Bloons Tower Defense YouTuber that made the tournament. These are ISAB, Chomp Chomp, SJB, Punchy BTD6, Alukian, and finally, H-Bomb managed to barely make the bracket, and I'll talk about him later. As for exciting matchups in the first round, since this is a seeded bracket, most of the best players aren't going to be against each other until the later rounds. The exception is Kledge versus Doncha43. Kledge did not try nearly as hard as she could have during the qualifier, and barely managed to make it into the tournament. Because of that, she's going to be facing one of the top seeds, Doncha43, and I can't wait to see how this is going to go down. However, that isn't the marquee matchup of round 1. That would be FRDS, a community veteran, versus H-Bomb, who you should know. H-Bomb barely managed to make it into the tournament, and he'll be going up against one of the best players in the tournament. You know what? I think this match is actually going to be exciting. As for me, I'm up against someone currently going under the nickname Mystery1234. To Mystery1234, whoever you are, I only have one thing to say. I think it's fair to warn you that I am practiced in the ancient art of origami.